In this lesson, we will learn about path animation. Path animation allows us to animate along a curve. So this is great for vehicles. If we need to have a car drive down the street and then make a turn, well, instead of trying to keyframe this, which would be very difficult to get the arc just right, instead we could just go ahead and have that car travel along the path, and we'll be done with the animation much faster. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this can be applied to our UFO. What we'll do is go ahead and head over to our top view, and we'll create a path for our flying saucer. So we'll go to Create, CV Curve Tool, Options. Let's go ahead and reset our settings, and we'll work with the 3 cubic curve degree. That way we can create a smooth curve. Now we'll go ahead and create a path. And then we can always modify this path even after this object has been constrained. From here, I might just go ahead and go to component mode in the perspective view and just start pulling up a few points just to make this more interesting. Okay, so this looks cool. Don't want to spend too much time on this. I think this is going to work out very well. Great. Alright, so now it's time to get our object constrained. So here's how this works. We would go ahead and grab our control object. We can then go ahead and grab our curve and head over to Animate, Motion Paths, Attach to Motion Path. Let's go to the options and make sure the settings are reset. So again, we can choose our time range, or we can choose the time slider. When we choose the time slider, we'll notice that a motion path key is created from our start frame to the end frame. That means that the distance that this will travel will be from the start of our curve, where we started our point, to the end of that curve. That's basically how that works. And then we have an option to choose if the animation should be affected by the spacing of our curve, or whether it should just go ahead and move at one consistent rate. So when this is off, it's actually going to move according to the spacing of our CVs. Whereas when this is on, again, it'll move at a constant rate. And then we have follow. This allows us to reorient our object to follow the curve. If this is off, only the position will move. And then we can choose what direction it should face, so the front axis, and then we could always flip that. I'll go ahead and show you how in the attribute editor, but keep in mind that these settings we see here can be accessed in the attribute editor. So we can choose our up axis, what direction it should point. So in this case, it should point up in the y-axis. Taking a look at our screen's y-axis, you can see that's exactly the direction that we'd like this to point in. But sometimes that may change. And now we have the type of up axis that we'd like to work with, whether it be from the scene or vector, or perhaps we have an object that we would like to use. I like to use this option for rigging. We could also use it for animation as well. It essentially allows you to create an up object and kind of move that around and use that to control the twist. If you don't want to control it using the twist controls that are provided, that we'll take a look at. So if you decide to use an object, you can go ahead and insert that object here into this World Up Object field. And now Maya knows exactly what you'd like to use as your up object. Really straightforward. And then we can inverse the up direction. So if you would like the object to be flipped around, instead of pointed up, you can go ahead and inverse that. And then if you would like to inverse your front axis, let's say if you want your UFO to do a trick where it flies backwards, well, we can go ahead and inverse the front axis, and now it'll fly backwards. And then we can choose banking, which is an automatic bank that allows us to have the ship bank according to the way the curve has been drawn. And we have our bank scale, how much of a bank we see, and bank limit, which is our capping point. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and attach our UFO and take a look at what happens according to our default settings. We'll go ahead and choose Attach. Alright, and take a look. There are a few things to correct, but you can see now how our UFO goes from 1 to 70. What if we wanted to change that? What if we wanted to speed up the animation a bit? Well, with the object selected that has been constrained to this path, we can head over to our graph editor. So watch. just to kind of show you this, you can see all of our translate and rotate channels have been tied down. That's exactly what this is controlling. So now when we press the F key to take a look at our graph, this one graph is controlling our motion. So if we wanted to speed this up, we can go in and grab our last key and we could set this to, let's say, frame 60. All right, so now you'll notice that the animation is going to go from 1 to 60. All right, so that's basically how that works. If you wanted a constant rate, you can head back to your graph editor. We can grab this curve and we could set it to linear. And now, when we play through this, the UFO will move at a constant rate. Cool. All right, so that's essentially how that works. We can go in and add keyframes. So if you wanted to, we can go ahead and set this back to, let's say, auto. And then you can go ahead and use your insert key tool. Go and adjust the view a bit. We can say, hey, I'd like to add a key around frame 24. So we'll go ahead and grab the insert key tool, middle click. And now, if we were to grab our move tool and start to drag this down a bit, we can add more of a hold. And then we can say, all right, I'd like to have it speed up as we get closer to the end. So we can go ahead and grab our out tangent or possibly the in tangent, whichever side. Either way, we just want to start making sure that we orient the tangent down so that it'll eventually start to pick up speed as it exits. All right, so here's what we end up with. We're going to get a much slower start and then a faster end. All right, fantastic. All right, now we need to make sure that it points in the right direction. Let's go ahead and press Control A to move over to our attribute editor, and then we'll find our motion path node. All right, so take a look. Again, we can access our settings right from here if we want to switch to parametric length. When we hit play, you can see how that's going to kind of adjust things just slightly. We see this work a little bit more when we start to work with larger paths. But still, we did see a change. Take a look at our value here as that changes when we move along the path. No longer is it considering the length of the path to determine if this should stay at a normalized rate of 0 to 1. But when we turn this off, then it will be normalized from 0 to 1. All right, sweet. And then next, again, we can choose our up object. We don't necessarily need to use this unless we're doing something really complex. But for our needs, it's not necessary working with the up direction. All right, sweet. So let's say we go ahead and actually do something that we need to do here. We need to go ahead and first make sure it's pointing in the right direction. So we can go ahead and take a look at our scenes axis to determine what the forward direction should be. And clearly that's the Z axis. So let's go ahead and switch the front axis to Z. All right. So just about there. Now let's go ahead and take a look. You can see that it's still flying backwards. So what we now need to do is go ahead and make sure we flip our front axis. Let's go ahead and choose inverse front. And now it's facing the right direction. Okay, but what about our up axis now? How can we tweak that? If we were to switch this to, let's say, X, all right, take a look. Now the X is what we actually need to use here, simply because we had to adjust our front axis. Because of that, the Y axis wouldn't work in this case. So we just want to make sure that we are choosing the right up axis. So clearly we need to now use inverse up to flip our UFO around so it's now facing the right direction as it flies. In no time at all, we've managed to correct the animation. Cool. All right, so how about banking? We could have this bank along our path. So notice when we enable this on frame 1, we might not see too much of a change, but as we start to get around a bend on our curve and we start to turn on the bank and start to increase our bank limit, that's when we'll notice a bit more of a shift in our UFO. I'm holding down Control and dragging in the bank scale field just so we can get more of a bank. And you'll notice that more on more extreme paths, but we could still see a slight bank as it goes around the curve. And then if you'd like to increase or decrease your bank limit, you have the option to do so. Right now it's about 90 degrees, but we can increase this to whatever we like, perhaps 180 degrees. If you notice this cycle issue, this comes along with the motion path. If you're rigging and you run into this, it's a problem, because that means that somewhere your rig might break because there's something that is driving another node, while that node that we're trying to drive is driving that node that we'd like it to be driven by. So yes, things can get that complex, especially with more advanced rigs. So we have to be careful about that. But for the motion path, this is just how it works. All right, so no need to be concerned with that warning. All right, sweet. Now, what if we wanted to create our own bank? Well, we have the option of animating our twist axes. Let's go ahead and press Control A to move back to our channel box, and we'll take a look at our motion path node. So we have the front twist. That's going to allow us to get more of a swivel here from the UFO. The up twist is going to be more of a pitch action. And then we have the side twist for an actual twist or a swivel according to our x-axis or our scene's y-axis. All right, sweet. So let's go ahead and animate our front twist just so we can really push this bank. So what I'll do is go ahead and head over to frame 1, right-click and choose key selected on front twist. Let's make sure auto key is on so we can speed up the time it takes to create some keyframes here. Now in about frame 20, what I'd like to do is have it twist more to our right. This is going to be some anticipation here. And I'm having it happen before frame 24 because we want to offset our keys just to create more fluidity. We don't want things to happen on the same frames all the time because that tends to lead to very robotic looking animations. Alright, so now we can go ahead and have it twist in the opposite direction as it goes around the bend. So on frame 35, we'll go ahead and have it twist around. Here's what we end up with. Instantly, we have this really cool looking twist as the UFO exits. Let's go ahead and hit play and take a look. Fantastic. So in this lesson, we've learned how to animate with the motion path tool, a great way to animate, let's say, objects that need to move in a really nice looking arc, perhaps vehicles, or perhaps an object being thrown, and you want to make sure the arc looks really nice. We'll go ahead and work with the motion path tool. Keep in mind that your transform channels are locked down, so we can't just go in and start to modify these and expect it to remember that change, because you can see once we start to move our time, it'll go ahead and snap back to where it should be. However, remember, we can always bake this down. We know how to do that, and then from there, we'll be given keyframes that we can modify. So it's nice that Maya gives us this much control.